You've got less than 200 days to prepare yourself for the crazy move of a lifetime. And what I mean with that is the Bitcoin halving is less than 200 days out. And that's the event where the amount of Bitcoin mined per block half, which is why it's called the halving. It basically shows just how scarce Bitcoin really is. And we, for the most part, have established that around this halving cycle, usually things get extremely bullish. And when I say around, I mean most likely slightly afterwards. So for example, the halving cycle right here in the middle of 2016, quickly afterwards, the first couple weeks or so, the price went down, but afterwards you can see how massive of a run started. And here in 2020 as well, a little downside, or at least a little bit of time to pick up the pace, but you can see just how crazy things went quickly afterwards. And right here again, the pattern that we're expecting is kind of like what you can see right here, right? You enter into the cycle, or at least the cycle comes, the halving cycle comes in, you continue up with a couple of dips along the way. In this case here, it made one new all-time high, a very significant dip, and then a new all-time high before dipping towards the trend line that's now lasted for almost an entire decade. And then as time progresses, going into the next halving cycle, it again leads upwards, leads to a new all-time high, reaches a major dip, then again, it's a higher low, before again slowly but surely moving itself towards the upside, reaching a new all-time high, before again reaching a new higher low, and then slowly but surely creeping towards the upside before, like we're expecting, here somewhere in 2025, it'll reach a new all-time high, before again reaching what we're expecting is it to reach upwards like this, reach new all-time high, come back down for a higher low, most likely above this line still, and then continue on like that as time progresses, unless something changes in the recipe, like for example these Bitcoin ETFs, like some crazy regulations from the SEC or CFTC. But I suppose that it's not going to change too much of this longer cycle. Just on the short term, it might make the dip more significant, it might make the high even higher, but I personally think a lot of this is already priced in. What I often like to show people, actually this right here, is the idea that right now that we're in a bear market, we actually are not in a bear market. Again, I personally think this dip right here has already been seen. Because again, if we look at the cycle, it seems we've already gotten the low point of the cycle at $15,000 or so. And even though the price doesn't have to spike upwards just quite yet, because back here in 2020, it also reached a second low point. It's not looking as if it's going to reach a new lower point. And even if it does, nothing is pointing towards the idea that this last decade-long trend line won't just replicate itself, with, again, Bitcoin ultimately still going higher, which I should add applies to every single altcoin as well. It takes a little bit longer for the altcoins to show it, but the idea is still the same. You don't know you're in a bear market, or you don't know you're in a bull market until a significant amount afterwards. As you can see from this whole section right here, right? Depression to disbelief. Let me show it to you like this. Officially, the bull market starts at this worst point. But once you're in this right here, you still think it's a sucker's rally. Yet, hypothetically speaking, you're already in one of these higher points, where you might have already been up 60-70% from the bottom point, and even though there's going to be dips along the way, the general trajectory is upwards. And the question is, at what point do you believe there is hope recovery is possible? For Bitcoin, is it going to be at 30,000? Is it going to be at 40,000? Because I personally believe if right now the price goes to 35,000, people will still be screaming, it's just a trap. It's not going to continue on. And perhaps even at $40,000, people will still not believe the bull market is back because the price can come down another 20, 30, 40% quickly afterwards. And people will give up again, even though that still means that the price still then is up 80% from the dip. And so when looking at this in a year or two from now, we're going to say this right here, November of 2022 was the lowest point, and so this was the bear market, this slight period right there, and then the bull market started again. Right now, people are still saying this is the bear market because we have not hit a new all-time high, because we're not breaking with crazy 40, 50, 60, 80% gains every single day. But I want you guys to really carefully realize that the reason we are buying so adamantly, the reason we don't care about the sentiment and about what people are saying over on X, etc., is because we've been through this so many times. I've been making content for a good while now, and if there's one thing I fully believe in, is that you gotta stay with a working system. And the working system is, in the worst of markets, we go for either fiat or Bitcoin. as the market starts to pick itself back up, which is already now, you diversify into some proper altcoins. Because in the bear market, in the worst at worst, Bitcoin just succeeds the best, or fiat does because Bitcoin goes down, and altcoins also. But as the market starts to pick up, Bitcoin is going to always set the precedent. It's going to take the dominance back relative to altcoins and gain earlier than altcoins will because it gains confidence first. But afterwards, it's going to flow into altcoins, and since they'll be gaining so significantly much more relatively, it's worth it to have some allocation towards them. Even though they go down a lot more in the bear market, they go up a lot more in the bull market. But again, this is as the bull market starts. As the bull market progresses, and we're starting to see those plus 50%, plus 80% days, again, we're going to diversify down lower into riskier and riskier sets and more specific for the trends, which I explained in my previous video. Like meme coin season, like DeFi season, whatever, you just invest in whatever's the trend at the moment.
Inflation in America today is man-made, and that man's name is President Joe Biden.
The reason I showed you guys that part real quick, and the reason I'm showing you this article and a couple of others, is because if you really start focusing in on just how crazy the world's economics are, it justifies a lot more why we're getting so heavily into crypto, and why there's no regret from my side ever as to buying crypto. Like, I always understand the value proposition, and I always understand. And I try to also give you guys those insights why I like crypto more than fiat. Because it's always a way off. Every single investment is a way off. You always look at the risk, you always look at the benefit, if the ratio is good. And so the risk, usually the higher it is, the more profitable it is too. The more volatile it is, the more risk, which are basically considered the same thing. Anyway, you also look at the potential benefit. And as we all know, historically speaking, and this is very important for you guys to realize, historically speaking, the gains have just been out of this world with crazy price movements every single time it reaches this low level, which is again the trend line. So why would that be different right now? Again, it could be, but the value proposition is just so solid. It's a matter of comparison. I personally think if you buy the US dollar, so you hold fiat, you're almost guaranteed to just lose money over time. So what exactly can you buy that has similar risk and similar gain? Almost nothing. You'll definitely find something with a lower risk, but that won't have the same potential. And you'll definitely be able to find something with higher risk, but that's like gambling. And with crypto, the way I see it is we understand the mission. We understand where this technology is headed towards. It's just a matter of how crazy will the adoption look like, how fast. And as I always say, people that are not into crypto just quite yet, they don't fully understand why anybody would buy it. If I look at my videos that sometimes get sent, mostly shorts, towards non-crypto people, the most common comment is crypto's a scam. And I'm talking about a comment rate of 80%. If there's a comment, 4 out of 5 are just calling me a scammer or are calling crypto a scam if they're pushed towards a non-crypto audience, which obviously 99% of the people watching my videos on this channel, the long form, are not. You guys are most likely into crypto and you understand. But trust me when I say that the majority of people still think this whole industry is going to collapse, and things like FTX did not make that any better. But as you're really in it, if you go to a conference or two, if you talk to some spearheads, you understand how much the industry is changing and what they're building and just how useful it is and what crazy future the world without crypto would have. Because we all know a CBDC is coming. We all know they're being worked on for a while. We all know that cash is going to go away and that things aren't necessarily going to look better for the average Joe. That inflation is a very big problem and there's no real cure, or there is, but they don't want to put it in. And we could go on like that for a while. The stock market, it has to crash at some point, right? I mean, everything is looking really bad. To put it into perspective, a new interest rate regime has begun. These are the market's winners and losers. Bond prices, the Magnificent Seven, and emerging markets are under pressure. The SEC bringing in so much money, but is still facing a shutdown. Again, government shutdown. Flashing red warning, $33 trillion US debt spiral could suddenly trigger a Bitcoin price vicious circle. And like I just showed you already, 5 economic shocks are about to hit the US all at the same time. There are storm clouds out there forming, and we're all seeing and watching fearfully. The system that's worked for about a century of buy into the US stock market, hold and wait, has basically worked for anybody that's alive right now. As long as you are not born before 1920, which again are only a handful of people around the world that are older than about 103, 104. Okay, there's some people that are older, but you understand the idea. That are also investing, not that many. Because you've got to understand that this system of just buy the US stock market, it hasn't been around for that long. It's just everybody that's alive, and most likely their parents as well, and potentially even their grandparents or their grandparents' parents, depending of course on how old you are watching this video. But if you're 65 years old, your grandparents could have started that scheme. of just by the US stock market is fine. You can see how far back it dates, 110 years. But before that, there were different world reserve currencies, and now we don't know what the next big boom in economy is going to be, what next is going to have the world reserve currency status. Is it going to be a group? Because again, what's also happening is the BRICS countries are already stopping their reliance, or at least lowering their reliance, on the US dollar. We're noticing a paradigm shift. And we're also noticing that the US is stifling a lot of innovation in the crypto market and the AI market by blocking things, which there was an advantage before with the US where they try to make every single entrepreneur the big thing, right? Hence, they called it the American dream. You can make anything out of your life. Just go to America, you'll get it done. But it's stopping. Other countries are taking over. As tech gets to a new level, India, for example, is doing amazing. We're just got to be honest here. The developer culture over there is just insane. Even though they're not so progressive with a lot of company parts, their developer community is so great. And you might say the industry over in China is doing pretty amazing. Well, a lot of these countries, while the US was at the top, have also been building up. And at some point, potentially, things are going to shift in terms of just how big a part the US plays. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon that the US will actually be overthrown, but they're ruining themselves in a lot of interesting ways. I mean, the fact that the government could shut down. Can you understand how crazy that concept would have sounded to so many others because of how solid the US has been for a good while? But again, people don't look at debt enough. The idea that the US can rake in so much debt is purely based on the idea that the US is the most solid foundation out there. If other countries lose their faith in the US and they think, oh, they might actually not be able to pay it all back, this whole system collapses. Similarly to how a bank collapses if people all of a sudden notice that the bank doesn't actually hold your money anymore. If everybody wants their money, it collapses. Anyway, before I go on for another tangent for an hour, as you understand that story, as you understand that value proposition, the fact that really nothing is inherently safe. You got a home, well, they can take it away from you. You got gold, well, they can take it away from you. You've got fiat, well, it's becoming worthless every single day. You've got treasuries, well, it can become worthless if the idea is worthless now. And I mean, in bad times, who wants your treasury? And so forth and so on. You can kind of think of a bad thing for everything. People always look at crypto and say, well, it's just going to blow away at some point. Well, but again, why would it? When the idea as to why it was built makes so much sense. And the guys that are building, I mean, look at XRP, for example. Look at Ethereum. Look at Bitcoin. The idea as to why they were built is very solid, makes a whole lot of sense, which is why they got to these levels of $1 trillion already. And from no perspective do I think it's stopping anytime soon. I just think it's going to keep increasing in terms of dominance over other markets. I mean, XRP and different cryptos as well could tap into derivatives market eventually, and so forth and so on. It's just like a small fraction of where it's about to head, not vice versa, where right now it's gotten too big and it's only going to diminish. I think it's only going to get bigger. As again, fear from all these other quarters increases because the fundamentals that we believed in for the last 100 years are changing, which is why some old heads, they don't like crypto too much because it goes against their old ideas. But the old ideas at some point have to be replaced or you never make progress. And as well, if you never make progress, you inevitably end up failing. But yeah, before I go on for too long, that's about it. If you enjoy these crypto videos, this one was not news based, mostly just to give you guys some insights. If you enjoy them, make sure you go ahead and press that like button. And I'll see you guys again in another crypto video, hopefully somewhere later today or tomorrow, whatever.